Hello, welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to talk about tips and tricks for pacing your online class. Stay tuned. Now, every online company is going to do something a little different. For VIPKID, it is 25 minutes class time, which is usually 25 slides. Now, not always. If you are brand new and you are looking at your schedule and you have an assessment and it says like 40 something slides, you're like, how in the world? I can barely get 25 in. How am I going to get 40 something slides in? Well, a lot of them are filler slides. If you've watched my UA video, then you know that it's like the title screen, or it's like level 1, which is the title screen for that section. So it's not as many as it looks. But no matter which of the free talk can be anywhere like 18 slides. I've seen a little less or a little more. The many different programs and classes that VIPKID offers, sometimes they vary. So what do you do? Because I know I was told 1 minute a slide, and that is the average 1 minute a slide. But sometimes on the reward slide, you might only spend a few seconds on the reward slide. You know, like 10, 20, 30 seconds. So because of that, it allows you to have more time at that title slide to build that rapport with that student. This is where knowing the lesson, previewing that lesson ahead of time is going to help you out quite a bit. So some people just kind of glance through the lesson, and you're going to hear that and see that in the forums and Facebook and all the different places. And it's not that they aren't doing that or they aren't good teachers. It's probably because they know the lesson really, really well and they're just reviewing it. I know there are some of those lessons that I have taught 2 and 3 times in the same day, let alone the same week. And now that I'm 7, close to 8 months in, then, you know, I've taught a lot of these lessons a lot. So it is possible for me to just refresh it in my memory. But if you are new to VIPKID or your online company, then you're going to have to take the time to really learn it. I don't mean memorize it. I mean, if I was learning English, where might I struggle? And you might not know that yet. Once you've done a couple of classes, you'll probably start to figure out where they're going to have an issue. But you can kind of guess. If they're having to write a whole bunch, write like 3 sentences, some of the lessons you have to write 3 sentences. Sometimes I let them just type it in the chat box if they have that option, if they're not on the iPad. But if they're writing it and they're having difficulty writing it, you have to allow time for that. So you have to look at what the activities are and think about how long it's going to take them. With some of my students that I know really well, and that's only because we've had a lot of classes together, so if you're new, you won't necessarily be able to do this. But with some of mine, I spend a lot of time on the vocabulary because I know that they will read fairly quickly through the rest of it, so it's not a slow reader. And I know, because we've seen that grammar before, that we can move quickly through the grammar, so I'll spend more time on the vocabulary because I know that's where they struggle. Because I know that, and I know the lesson well, I've looked through it, I've glanced at the activities and what they have to do, I'm able to make that adjustment. So I might spend a couple of minutes in the vocabulary section, shorter time later in the lesson. It sometimes pays off really well later. If you don't know the student, it is a brand new student to you, then you kind of have to feel them out. That's where at the beginning, I'll have that rapport. I will maybe move quickly through the first vocabulary slides. If it's a level 2, if they started reading it right away, all right, I can probably extend with this one. I'm going to try. They read kites fairly quickly. without me asking. I circled it and they said kite before I even had a chance to say it. Okay, they can read that word kite, so they must know the material very well. So let's see if they can read the sentence at the bottom. Great job. What does this say? And I'll underline it. If they can't read it, then I know we've got the vocabulary, but now we need to practice the sentences. Do I care if a level 2 can read it? Well, I guess it depends on where they are in the VIPKID realm of the level 2, but I'm more worried about them being able to speak it, and then we'll work on the reading as that comes. I want them to, speaking comes first. You know, if you think of yourself when you learn to speak English, you spoke it a long time before you read or before you wrote it down. So you got to remember the same thing with these kids. I know you're thinking, well, that sounds wonderful if the class goes ideally, but it rarely goes ideally, right? Your student gets distracted, or maybe you were extending and we kind of trailed off into this wonderful conversation, which is great. However, I glance up at the clock and I'm only on slide 10 and I only have like 3 minutes left in class. Well, you need to practice, but there are some things you can do when you find yourself in that situation. One of the things that you can do is don't skip slides ever. For example, I don't do, well, the level 2s, I use the interactive reward slide to gauge, do they know how to drag and drop? Can they name any of the things that are on the screen? To kind of give me an idea of what they can and cannot do. But I don't use it like a reward. I'm sure if you've watched some of my other videos, you've heard me say that. But, so I don't really skip that one, but I'm not using it as a reward. For the upper levels, it's not interactive, and so I'm not skipping that slide either. I will say, oh, I have another reward for today, but what is this? And it was a picture of a roller coaster. They could not tell me it was a roller coaster. So I went ahead and introduced it. Yes, I'm going to introduce it in a minute, but it's not going to hurt them to hear it early. Roller coaster. And then I asked her a question about roller coasters, and it just kind of got us moving and kind of warming up a little more without actually getting into the lesson. But I spent maybe not even 30 seconds on that. So, but now, maybe she was a struggling reader. Maybe she struggled and was reading the story slow or the sentences really slowly. Maybe there was a lot of pronunciation to correct and it just took us a long time. And now I'm almost out of time. I don't know what to do. Usually the math and grammar is towards the end, not always, but usually. And so what I do is explain the grammar. Sometimes you're just reviewing the grammar because they had it last class. Again, this is where you might be able to, if you haven't taught the previous lessons, is if you read through on the material section underneath of the slides, is other teacher feedback, not feedback on the student so much, but about the slides. And sometimes you can get some, like, slide 15 takes forever or something like that. So when I get to the grammar, then maybe we just do odd numbers, or maybe we just do even numbers. Now you do have to be careful that you're at least mixing up the skills in there, because one time it was would and should in a grammar class, and I was like, we'll just do the odd numbers, and then it was all should, and they didn't practice would at all, so I had to add in one of them to make sure we got practice on both of those. So, and then you're only doing 2 or 3 on, like if there's 5 questions on there. Or, especially like if they do 1 or 2 and they did really, really well with it, then I'm still doing something on that slide, but I'm kind of touching and going, so that I can move through a little faster to try and make up some time. What do you do if you move too fast? I'm only 10 minutes into the class and I only have a few slides left. What do I It's not as hard as you think. First of all, more practice will help you with that. Just the more you do it, the more you'll learn to kind of slow it down or speed it up where you need to. But if you find yourself in that situation, even if you've done over 3,000 classes, we still sometimes find ourselves in that situation. We were just having a conversation, and the next thing we know, we're like almost done. So what you can do is use your reward to help extend. Now, I don't always do a reward that's related to what we're doing. Sometimes I just do a fun one, especially if it's a regular I've had a long time. But if it's a new to me student, I try to do a reward. Now, I do Google Slides. If you don't know what that is, check out my channel. But I find the rewards that go along with the lessons because it helps me extend the lessons. Now, I don't have my digital things up now, but if we were talking about colors, then I might use the flower reward for there, and then a star is hidden behind it. So I might go, oh, you get a flower. What color is the flower? Yes. What color is this? And of course, I'm holding it up to the camera so they can see it better. But that helps to extend it. And I also make sure that they answer in a complete sentence. I know in the real world we don't always answer. We would just say it's red, or but because this is an English class, sometimes it depends on what my goal is. I want them to stretch out and work in a full, complete sentence. I know it's red is a complete sentence, but sometimes I want them to say, the flower is red and yellow. If we're practicing and, or maybe the word was flower, then I want them to practice out that whole thing. Now, if I have a student that can't say all that, then no, I don't do that. If it's the lower levels, then I would just say it is red, or it's red, or it's red and yellow, because they know those colors. So you do have to adjust the sentence to your student. But the reward is one way you can slow it down, especially if you do it throughout the class. Another thing I tried to do is, because I assessed how they were talking to me during the introduction time and what they were able to do on the reward slides, really any of them, I used that information. Could they drag and drop quickly? Did they answer me in complete sentences? Did they not answer me at all? That kind of gives me a clue as to what they can and cannot do. Not fully, because maybe they're just shy and don't want to talk yet, but it kind of gives me an idea. So, if on the first one, they don't say anything, maybe it's kite and, well, let's do ball. Ball, I see a ball. So, if I'm like, ball, and ball, good, I see a ball. Good. Now, if they repeat that well, then I may try to extend it. Do you have a ball? And I wait and see. If they just stare at me, they either don't want to talk to me or they didn't understand. So I might go, I have a ball. Do you have a ball? And I'll act like I'm looking around them. And then sometimes they get that and they're like, oh, no, teacher. If they just say no or yes, I extend that into a sentence. No, I don't. Then I might say, no, I don't have a ball. And see how they do with that. That kind of gauges. That's all on that first full slide. The one right after the reward is probably where it would fall. And so I've already taken up the full minute just extending it like that. But if you don't think you can do that, then if it is a yellow ball, what color is the ball? Yellow. Good. The ball is yellow. Good. I want to say the ball is yellow because it's practicing ball in there, not it is yellow. Although that's a good sentence, but I want to practice the vocabulary. So if you will look for those, and that may just come with time, but as you're previewing the lesson, then look at it. You don't need to spend hours previewing it, but look at each of the slides and think, if the student goes through this really fast, what's another thing I can ask or have them do? If they are taking forever, where is something I could speed up? Maybe I could do just 2 things on this slide or 1 thing on this slide. Maybe on this slide, I have them, if it's the upper levels, I have them read this and I read this. That will help speed it up too. I hope that these tips and tricks help you with your pacing in your classroom. If you have any ideas, tips, tricks, suggestions, whatever you have to help us with pacing, leave them down below in the comments. If this video gave you some ideas, leave me a thumbs up. Remember to like, subscribe, and hit the notification button. And feel free to share. See you next time. Bye.